All right, welcome to another episode on Incredibelle Conversations with me, your host, Isabelle Wellman. Oh, we are on episode 3 of series 2, Women of the World. And today, I am so thrilled for this episode, the alignment that has come into my life with this individual, and just pure and raw example of truly being in alignment with what you want to bring forth into your life. And that is just what I always talk about. And this is it. So because I have been able to stay in a truth of higher consciousness, of doing that work, I've been able to align with Miss Victoria Pippo, Ascension guide and energy healer. And I shit you not, you guys, it does not matter what you think about social media and what you think about people randomly meeting here and there, because it doesn't matter. You align with exactly who you need to align with, and that is how I met Victoria. Just through my talks and noticing her talks and then seeing how pure her messages are. I'm just so stoked to bring her on the show. So without further ado, I want to welcome this beautiful soul onto the show. How are you
doing? Girl. You are the cutest little thing I have ever seen. So I just want to first take a moment and say thank you so much for thinking about aligning with me. I think most of us can agree that we love to talk about ourselves. So any opportunity that I get to be able to share my journey, hopefully inspire others to really give themselves permission to be in their fullest expression, absolved of fear, and really integrated into faith, I feel is completely in alignment with the messages that I share. So I just want to take a moment and say thank you for having me here. Thank you for aligning with me all the way from Alaska. She is located in Alaska. Some of you I'm sure know, and I'm all the way in Vancouver right now. So very honored and blessed to be able to share this sacred space with you. So oozing with gratitude, my friend.
Love it. Beautiful. Yes, thank you. It was so much fun reaching out, and just like we talked prior to this, you gotta, grow some balls sometimes. Be like, I'm just gonna reach out to those people that you that inspire you, and that you're like, but what if they say no? And that's the thing. You just gotta go out and put it out there, because what's the worst thing that can happen? They say no. Like, that's it. Or they don't respond.
I would never say no to you, though, because genuinely I have felt very called to our connection since we first connected. There is something so pure and raw about your spirit, and being an energy healer, it's pretty transparent for me when someone has an energy that's in alignment. So I'm grateful to be that for you, to be that nudge outside of fear, to lean in, to absolve the what if mentality, and to be here today.
Excellent. Well, let's get into the nitty-gritty with this. And I want to know more about your life prior to you discovering these gifts that you behold, and what exactly that you had to go through in order to the there and then, what you had to go through there and then to uplift that and to kind of pull back that veil.
Yep. I love the term pulling back the veil. I use that quite a bit in the work that I do. Pulling back the veil, if you don't know what that means, for me personally, it really is just almost like imagining yourself peeling like an onion, pulling back anything between you and the core of your being. Right? We all come into this world with parents who have us, whether or not they're absent or present in our lives. We come out of a womb, and those are our parents, right? And that creates this identity, a name, a location, a being, an idea, a false sense of self that we identify with growing up. And for me, in my then and there, I grew up in an environment with parents who were in the midst of a divorce pretty much as soon as I came out of the gate, literally. And my parents actually, between the ages of 0 and 7, had remarried 3 times each. So in the pivotal times of my, my brain development and my understanding of love and commitment and connection, it was very turbulent, to say the least. But the story gets better, I promise. I was put into performing actually at a very young age. My father was a professional soccer player most of his life, and to no avail of trying me to get involved into sports, I had always this creative side about me. I was always singing in my bedroom, closing the door, waiting until dinner to come out of my imaginary world and come into the realm of reality. So I'd always found escape in music. I'd always found escape in storytelling, in pretending and fantasizing about a life that was very different than my current reality. And that was a safe haven for me. So at a very young age, around the age of 7, actually, I was put into community theater. I was put into singing competitions, modeling competitions. My mother was the epitome of dance mom, to say the least. and I loved it. I loved it for actually a very long time, up until about this past year, to be frank with you. So I've been performing all of my life. There was always this underlying knowing that I was meant to storytell. That was just always a part of my existence. Granted, I didn't come from a lot of money, but I remember this narrative my mother told me, that no matter how poor we may be, we will never look poor. And so I always grew up kind of being the person to run to the first garage sale to get clothes, hand-me-downs from the wealthy kids at school. I was always that kid who was putting myself in an environment where perhaps I didn't fit in, but I looked like I had fit in. And that was predominantly most of my childhood. A false sense of reality to keep control of a very chaotic childhood. And storytelling and performing was the way that I found that outlet. So fast forward a little bit to age 16, my mother had heard from a friend after a show through Alignment that, your daughter should look into traveling to the United States. I suppose I should preface again that I do live in Canada. So coming from a family of financial turbulence most of my life, it wasn't necessarily ideal to move away, but I had this gift that a lot of people were starting to recognize in my community. There's something different about Victoria. She has this presence about her on stage. I would almost black out when I was on stage, where I wouldn't remember what I was interacting with, but I knew that I was almost becoming the character. And that makes sense now that I've tapped into my gifts. But I ended up getting into this private boarding school in Michigan at the age of 15, 16. And the universe blessed my family with loans after selling belongings to pretty much everything possible to be able to get me into this boarding school. So I moved away when I was 16. I went to a private boarding art school called Interlochen Arts Academy. I was there for 2 years. It was magnificent. This was like the first time that I was like, oh yeah, this is not just singing in my room, closing the door kind of experience. I am now in a rigorous program with people from all over the world who are considered to be the black sheeps of their family. And that was very liberating and empowering for me. I also was very blessed to get into a college in Ohio soon after called Baldwin Wallace Conservatory. I was actually the first Canadian in my class to be accepted at that time. And I believe now still to be the only Canadian. And at this time, I think the beautiful thing about my experience was there was always this financial tug. No matter where I was at school, my family was like deeply suffering trying to get me through my education, but really pushing on this identity of me being a performer so they could finally say that they found the light in their very dark traumatic cycles, that I ended up being the expectation to release for them. So I did 4 years of education in the United States after that to get my Bachelor of Music. So I have a Bachelor of Music in Musical Theater. Very, very blessed I can only say, being that, you know, I had the dean of my school sign away paperwork to be able to let me stay in school, even though I hadn't actually paid for the last 2 years of my education, because my family had experienced both losses of jobs, and my sister had suffered from a brain injury that put her out of work. So everyone in my immediate family was out of work, but due to the nature of my spirit and the good graces of the universe, I ended up graduating. So I graduated, I did the thing, I moved to New York City. I don't know how. I've been very, almost getting by, the universe always blessing me because I had the will to make it happen for everyone around me. And so I did 7 months in New York City. I think at this point, this was probably the turning point for me, where I realized that I wasn't going to be singing my feelings for the rest of my life, and that something was shifting. But I hadn't meditated before. I hadn't had a spiritual practice. My family, like I had just mentioned, was really beginning to suffer from mental illness and different sorts of brain injuries that were weighing down the idea that I wanted to do something for them instead of what I really wanted, which was to honor my life. For me, it kind of became more about them than it became about my journey. Then I got blessed with the opportunity to work for Disney Cruise Line. So in 2017, 2018, I moved on a cruise ship, and I was very blessed to portray characters like Elsa and Belle. That was my first contract, completed at the end of 2018. And then I moved back to New York City, and I had no visa. I had a partner who had been long distancing with me for about a year and had been unfaithful the entire time. And I knew that. And how contradictory that I was singing Let It Go for 9 months, but I had no willpower in me to let him go because he was financially stable. He was older than me. He was the reflection that I needed to grasp onto this illusionary need to keep control of something that ultimately wasn't in my control. My visa ran out. I had to move home after, 8 years of having this expectation that New York was the way, that I was going to be a Broadway star, that it was, that was the answer to be the answer for my family. And I moved home. And I think that was the aha moment for me, because I had the greatest expectation hangover of my life. Planning and plotting my life for my family, planning and plotting my life to save them. And that's when things started to really change for me, is because I started to research about anxiety, understanding my relationship to mindfulness, constantly being in this fight or flight, never knowing if I was going to make it to the next semester of college, never knowing if my family was going to have the means to be able to assist me in this path that they had ultimately chosen for me. And I started meditating every day. I found a sales job in Toronto, and I met some girlfriends. Actually, this was the first time that I had girlfriends who were in alignment, kind of like you and I is. They were in the spiritual work. They recommended that I should go see an energy healer. I said, kiss my ass. That sounds really silly. They said, you should try it anyway. I was resistant, and I walked into my first tarot reading, and that was pretty much what changed my life. Having someone pull tarot cards for me, talking about things that but you don't want to hear, talking about the generational trauma in my life, and ultimately telling me that at the path I was at, I would be next to experience the turbulence of my familial line. I invested about $20,000 over the last year in this energetic healer. Over the last 12 months, we worked together to release all of the generational trauma between my family line, passed down bloodline, and any trauma lodged in my system from a very chaotic and challenging childhood. During that time, I was gifted another opportunity to move back to the Disney cruise ship. I completed my contract actually from August 2019 to March 14th, 2020. And now I am here. Now I am here after investing literally everything I had finally in myself, to witness what happens when you are at your wit's end, your rock bottom, how you have to choose to get out, or you can choose to stay where you are. And I decided to use the strength of my will to pull myself out of this massive expectation hangover of living my life for other people's losses. And now I have the honor of being able to do the exact work that my energy healer had gifted me over the past 12, 13 months and bestow that same healing upon them.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It is
an
honor to hear that story. Wow. I am sure some listeners out there are able to resonate on some level with the financial insecurities and the not believing in ourselves, but then that deep in the belly where you just feel so heavily into, this is what I need to do, and no one else is going to do it except me. So
100%.
Gosh, righteous work for being able to harness that. Gosh, I love that story.
I appreciate you, Queen. Thank you for saying that. Yeah. And, you know, the beautiful thing about it is I don't identify with any of it anymore. You know, I really just try to live as presently focused as possible and to use all of the things that I have learned from my experience of storytelling and memorizing and script reading and all of those skills that I learned over the years of performing, taking direction, creating narratives, to now use those exact same skills in my toolbox to be able to be where I am now. So I'm only anything but thankful.
What's your personal, let's see, what question do I want to ask? What is your personal favorite part of when you were undergoing your own healing? What was that? What was something that really stuck with you that was like, whoa, okay, this is like, that really got you into it and that tilted you there?
I had spent pretty much my entire Disney contract last year in hermit mode, I call it. I was the person on the ship who hadn't only really spent time with herself. I did my shows, I meditated in between, I spent time by myself, I did the journaling and the podcasting, this deep introspective work that typically happens at the first of a spiritual awakening, where you're like, nothing is as it seems, and I feel very alone in this world. So I spent truly I'd say about 5 months out of my 6 months of my contract completely alone and deeply in my moment with myself. But I remember there was a specific moment in time where, I should preface this by saying that when I got on my cruise ship last year in August, I was in a relationship, my first healthy relationship. We had a summer love in Toronto before I moved on the cruise ship. This was the first healthy reflection that was not a reflection of the patterns I had chosen in my life. And him and I used to write love letters to each other. We'd write poems. And I remember we were like, distance is nothing when the heart is this strong. And the day before I was supposed to get on to, this is an important part of the story, I completely missed it. The day before I was supposed to get on the cruise ship with my cast, okay, we have a cast of about 30 people. If you miss the first 2 weeks of onboarding on the ship, you're SOL, I like to say, because it's very challenging to integrate the shows into the ship life. It's very challenging. Costumes, lighting, timing, all of that is very challenging work. We work 12-hour straight days for the first 2 weeks. It's about 9 p.m. at night. I'm about to get on the ship at 5 a.m. And I'm looking around, getting all my things in order. And I say, where the F is my passport? And my passport was missing. I left it on the plane, you see. And I couldn't get on the cruise ship with my cast. I had $30 in my bank. I was waiting on a prayer because I assumed that once I was getting on the ship, I was going to receive the pay stub that I would be getting regularly for being a full-time contracted main stage performer. And that was like the rug pulled out of me moment, the same feeling as that New York feeling where you think you have everything together, you think you have the control, and the universe goes, you have no idea what the heck you're doing. And that was the moment in time where I really started to fall into this pattern of, is this partner really what I want right now? I don't even know myself. How can everything seemingly be together when realistically, I think I'm holding things together still in the same way I was before in attempts to keep control. It's still my ego trying to keep control of my identity. And what I really wanted with this cruise ship contract was to be free. And to be free means to be outside of a partner, outside of any bounds, outside of anything, just finally me, myself, and I. And so I broke up with him. I gave him literally no notice, and I broke up with him, and I have not heard from him since. And that was a very challenging time for me because it was the first healthy relationship I had ever had in my life. It was the first person that didn't reflect the toxic patterns of my past. And I couldn't understand that first inner knowing of it's time to leave him, which I now know is your intuition. That knocking voice, that voice that keeps knocking on you for the rest of your life. It would have knocked for me my entire ship contract, because I needed to explore myself. I also started to explore my sexuality. I now am in a relationship with a woman. These were things I wouldn't have been able to do if I wouldn't have listened to that first knock. And so to answer your question, I would say that that first moment in time for me was when I realized that I had this false sense of truth in my life to try to keep control of things that were ultimately not in my control. And that moment of that rug pulled under me again, to recognize that it finally needed to be about me, myself, and I, was the shifting point for me. I went through a huge period of grief. I actually ended up continuing to write my love letters to him, with the attempts that I was going to knock on his doorstep every single week, writing throughout my ship contract, which I did, writing him love letters, until the love letters turned into empowering stories about a woman who found herself in the midst of a heartbreak, and how I ultimately found myself without him. It ended up being what I now have as an ebook that I've written without any of his words, with all of this story of what it feels like to love and to lose and to find yourself in the midst of it. So it started as a heartbreak and like everything around me falling apart, and it turned into this deep understanding of the power within you.
I absolutely, wow. Powerful story. That gave me chills from head to toe the whole time. Oh, the sweet love. As a hopeless romantic myself, the writing love letters like every day and doing those things, wow, how powerful. And then to listen to yourself, to answer that door. I have to go into this real quick because I love relationships. I love love. Love is everything. How much difference is it to be in a relationship with a woman versus a man? I have to ask it because I've never been with a woman, but I'd love to hear about it.
I thank you for actually opening up that door, because I absolutely was completely unsatisfied in all of my partnerships with men. Not only sexually, because I think that there was a gap between power struggles, I would say. I'm a very dominant woman, and so I found it very challenging in my relationships with men to find that balance. But mostly I would say that in my relationship with Rachel, it's just a deeper understanding of the nurturing of one's emotions that I would say is the biggest shift. Granted, my last partner was extremely feminine, and I think that's ultimately where I was headed. You know, being, whether I was with a woman or a man who was deeply rooted in their feminine, the need to be with someone who was rooted in their flow, rooted in their emotional bodies, was necessary for me. But towards the end of my ship contract, actually, it was like the last week, and I was at a party on the cruise ship, and there was this beautiful woman who I just started talking to at the bar. And next thing you know, we're dancing together, and like it feels like not awkward, and things are flowing really nicely. And then she comes back to my dorm room. I call it my dorm room because it is like a college dorm room. And she kisses me. And I remember I jolted up out of my bed, and I opened the door and I said, "Get out." Because I was floored that I liked it. Yeah. And I was also floored that I had opened up that door. And I had spent a little while after my ship contract talking to this woman, but ultimately knowing that, you know, she had lived in the UK and I had lived in Canada, and it ultimately wasn't going to be a fit. But that was the start of like opening that door for me of, maybe there could be a woman, you know, maybe there could be this experience with a woman. And this story with Rachel is actually as silly as it sounds, but I remember telling my sister, I think I might end up being with a woman. I'm feeling it. And it's interesting because I'm still not looking at women on the street being like, damn, like it was just like I was very much still operating with the lenses of the masculine, of men. And my sister says, well, you got to check out this super hot lesbian on TikTok. And she's blown up like crazy. She's super fine. Check her out. And so I found her on TikTok. Mind you, I don't have TikTok. And I found her through my sister sending me her information. I said, you know what, if I was to date a woman, it would absolutely look like that. And now it's so interesting because the egoic things I like about men, for example, I always wanted my partner to have long hair. I always wanted my partner to have a sleeve. I always wanted them to wear cute undies. Rachel wears men's clothes. She wears cute little boxers. She's got a sleeve tattoo, long hair. I'm like, that is essentially what I was manifesting without even realizing it. And it's been such a beautiful experience for me because I have intimacy blocks just by rooted in, you know, relational trauma and parental relations, to be in this space with a woman where I have no choice but to confront the thing that I was most afraid to confront, which is really genuinely opening my heart and allowing love in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Oh, love. Yes. It reigns victory every time. And how peculiar. Everything you manifest, it comes to you. You just gotta whoop, lens of love, opportunity. How's it coming to me right now? And it's never how you think at first.
Oh, girl, it's not how you think. I remember my energy healer. We actually stopped working together probably in about July of this past year. So from about, let's say September to July, we were consistently working together. And she was like, I want you to keep your eyes open. There are tons of relationship options around you. And I do think one is going to be a woman. And out of nowhere, I had messaged Rachel on Instagram. We had kind of been messaging back and forth. Mind you, this woman has a very large platform. So she's probably getting about at least 100 plus messages a day of women asking to marry her. Okay. And she finds me in her messages and responds to me. And then randomly, we've been back and forth, slow and steady, like nothing. I didn't think anything of it. And she goes, hey, I'm actually coming into Toronto for a photo shoot. Would you like to hang out? And this is like immediately after my energy healer had said to me, you know, keep both eyes open. And that was basically how it started. So she ended up coming to hang out with me, and it was like, oh wow, I really do want to take her clothes off. What is that feeling? You know? What is that feeling? And because I had done my spiritual work and I had opened my heart up, I didn't give a flying fuck what gender she was. I just knew she had a beautiful soul. And that to me has been the biggest accomplishment of my spiritual awakening, to be so open to love regardless of the form that it comes in.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen to that. Thank you for sharing that. Oh, that just makes a heart all warm and gooey.
Thanks. We think so. We've got a good love over here. Very healthy.
Oh yeah, I love it. I love following along on the Instagram about all of you guys, your little stories and your dates and your cute photo shoots.
Yeah, it's beautiful, you know, and what's nice about it is it balances each other very well, because, you know, Rachel grew her platform to well over 330,000 on TikTok since quarantine this year. Right? And what's symbolically so in alignment is that since March 2020, that was when I started to open up my spiritual gifts. Like, I didn't know I was psychic. I didn't know I had these gifts. I didn't know that I had this ability to help heal people. So simultaneously, our life paths have been evolving at very rapid speeds in alignment with one another. And now in a time where I know myself, her platform's very much thriving. We align in a way that now we can serve each other. You know, I think for us, she's helping me grow my following by not only selflessly promoting my work, but just by being in a relationship with me. And then I'm also assisting her in really finding her authentic voice, which is something that I take a lot of pride in, is speaking from my authentic truth. And so it's a beautiful merging and blending of a truly divine twin flame union at the perfect simultaneous time of our evolution.
Yes, and please elaborate on twin flame for those who don't understand what that is, because I'm all about it. I'm all about it.
Yeah. You know, there are many types of flames that we have in this life. We have a karmic flame, someone who's here to teach us and help us clear out karma. Maybe it feels like it's like burning super bright. This relationship is so fiery, but then there's all of these toxic patterns that come out. There's a karmic flame. There's a soulmate, someone who just feels like that you've known them in this lifetime, but there may be that stirring and that knowing underneath you that it's not meant to be forever. It's just meant to teach your soul something to evolve. And then there's your twin flame. And the best way that I've understood twin flame, it is, you can elaborate on this if you feel called, but I just feel like your twin flame is you. You know, they are you. They are the exact energy of you on a similar simultaneous life path as you are, and you feel that stirring no matter how hard you try to suppress it or numb it or distract it, but you're gravitationally pulling towards that energy, where to me feels like a home base.
Yes. that was well said. I think I can agree with that one. That's how I actually I feel that our whole lives are based off of this merging together, this intertwining, and you don't know it because you're living these separate lives, and then you're doing what you need to do. And the more that you stay on that truth and your path, and the more that you try to assist yourself, and you grow and you learn, you take those little lower hanging fruits as bait, and then you plant the seeds, and then that tree begins to grow, and you're able to almost be like, hey, I'm here. That partner comes, they eat your fruit, and it's that oneness with them. And I feel that heavily with my partner now. How you're explaining the karmic, the soul to twin flame, that was, I just instantly saw exactly what you're seeing in relationships that I have had. And wow.
That's exactly it. And I've had many soulmates and karmic flames that, you know, you place these false promises on them because you so deeply want them to work, you know, not even necessarily recognizing that when you choose to be in union, you're also choosing that portal for potentially getting your heart broken, right? You make that choice. That is a choice that you make. But then I feel like when you date and find and align with your twin flame, it's almost like a deeper sense of knowing. Right? The things that Rachel is mirroring to me are the things like my greatest and deepest wounds. But it doesn't feel like I need to run away from it, or I need to, you know, push that partner away, but rather it's keeping me closer to them, almost gravitating me more to work towards her when I have a tendency to want to run, to merge souls, if that makes sense. There's a merging and a different grounding and understanding in our partnership. I think that's why people say, you know, when you know, it does feel like that. It was like, oh yes, that is the home base. That is the landing.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly it. It's, gosh, it, what you were just saying about like, oh my gosh, you see exactly the wounds and what you have to work on, and that's when you know when you're not afraid to confront it, and you're like, hey, maybe I have to cover my eyes to say this to you because I'm embarrassed. It's my ego based off of whatever your personality is, but like, I can say these things, and you know that person is going to equally accept and invite and love it because it's who you are. And it does, there's not even the question of like, the ego doesn't even go to the place of, oh, what if they don't like me because of this, because I'm expressing this. Like, that doesn't happen at that stage, at that point, at that level, because you're just so immensely deep in that relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's interesting in my partnership with Rachel is I personally don't feel, what if she doesn't think I'm good enough or love me? I think for me, it's more of, I'm in fear at times because I've done so much work to find my own inner power that I think my fear is fully surrendering to having another be a part of my journey. And I think for her, being someone who hasn't fully tapped into her full spiritual potential yet, I think she does have moments of, what if I'm not good enough for this person who is a spiritual witch, you know, who can deeply understand my experience in a way that I'm not able to articulate yet. And I think that that's the beauty of it. You know, the things that we're mirroring to each other, her being a Pisces and myself being a Capricorn, if anyone knows anything about that dynamic, her being very challenged by expressing herself and me being very forthright about my needs and desires is beautiful, because she teaches me surrender and flow, and I teach her structure and rigidity. So that balance really works well, considering she is here as a Pisces to really blend that and reveal that veil between the spiritual and the material. And she doesn't quite understand her power yet. And so she is still operating in that what if mentality. But my job is to help her, by being in my true power, assist her in breaking apart the barriers between that what if mentality and that knowing truth.
A teacher and student simultaneously.
Absolutely. But damn, when I tell you she's teaching me, I mean, you know, the things that I've had to really work on in terms of this perpetual pattern, even in my last partnership of running, you know, running because I just don't want to deal with the pain and the heaviness and the feelings that I feel. And that's a natural pattern for me that I've grown accustomed to, is this, I've learned how to rely on myself, and I've proudly can say that I am completely self-sufficient, but I will forever have that feeling of wanting deeply that connection, which we are all here on earth to have. So how do I find this blend of self-sufficiency and merging with the union? And Rachel does that so beautifully. You know, her parents have been together all her life. She grew up in the same place most of her life, you know, so she knows stability, and all I know is instability. So it is that role reversal switches very easily for both of us. Finding that blend of surrender is probably, I would say, the most important lesson that she and I are both learning in our union together.
Right on. That's I think that is a lot what people need to kind of wake up to. Like, we're always going to be switching that roles, and if we can just support one another in that oneness, to take it from two separate people to that one.
Yep. And I think a beautiful way to do that is, and this is, you know, for your listeners, is really just being conscious of the ways that your partner is mirroring things back to you. Everything is one in this universe. Everything that you attract into your reality is a reflection of you. So this partnership is a reflection to me to show me where I'm still limited in my self-sabotaging cycles. And for her, it's very reflective of the same thing. It's about recognizing what that mirror is showing me. And instead of turning a blind eye and turning the lights off to the reflection, it's almost turning the lights brighter and really leaning into what makes me uncomfortable. Because relationships are extremely uncomfortable, but we'll perpetuate that which we don't want until we finally look at that shadow and say, you know, it's all right, you know, 5-year-old child who watched her parents get separated and not understanding where stability comes from. Let me find that stability in this beautiful reflection of a partner I have who has known stability so deeply in her life, right? So it's really just about seeing and asking yourself, what is this relationship reflecting to me in the ways of which I'm expanding, but also in the ways I'm still limited.
What ways do you feel that limitation shows up for you?
I would say right now my biggest limitation is in the fact that I am financially providing in this household. And due to the fact that financially I have so many blocks in terms of, you know, growing up in a family where my father made money very conditional. And then in the sense that my mother would spend literally everything to be able to get me by. So that mentality of conditional love is imprinted pretty thick in my system. You know, I pay the hydro, so can you turn the fucking lights off? That idea is very rooted in my system. And when I'm financially supporting this household, it is weighing on that narrative that I am somehow being the provider, even though Rachel finds other ways to provide right now. in the sense that, for example, she's an influencer. So she gets a ton of things for our home, i.e. a mattress for free, i.e., different face products to take care of us, i.e. she takes care of the laundry and makes sure that the house is clean. And she does things while I'm hustling all day to be able to support me and grounding me on the earth plane so that I don't lose my sense of reality. Because in the spiritual work, especially right now, everything that's happening, I'm very, very focused on serving the planet. And she brings me back down to the ground. But I would say my power struggle financially right now is definitely something that I'm working on in my relationship. I've welcomed in tapping into my ritual, tapping being something like EFT, using different tapping techniques to release some of these abandonment wounds. Some of this scarcity mindset around money is a big one for her and I. But ultimately, this idea of running is a big one for me. Complacency, getting comfortable when I'm used to chaos, and then really making her very aware of it and letting her know that I don't need to be smothered, but that I just need her to be aware of the fact that I'm confronting this shadow and I'm doing the work to alchemize it, and that I will be staying. So those are pretty much the two things that I'm being reflected back, and I am so conscious of it that I'm doing the work to be able to alchemize it intentionally.
I appreciate that comment with the provider. Very relatable, very deep there.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to that. And money right now is such a heavy energy because we are all in some way or another really weighing very, very heavily so based on what's happening on the planet. Money is also a part of this ascension process to alchemize our relationship to money, meaning to really abolish this idea that money is evil, or that there's never enough, or that we cannot be in a consistent state of flow, that we're constantly indebted in our life. A lot of these are narratives that we're really hopefully coming to a space of finding peace within. And for me, being, let's just be honest, at least $100,000 of debt based on my United States education, and yet still releasing that bond of feeling indebted in some way has been really profound shadow work for me. And that's ultimately just remembering that when I am of service, I am always paid for my presence. Always. When you're of service, when you serve your highest good, whether that means that you're even just cooking dinner for your sick mother, or that means that you're taking your dog outside, taking him out to play when it's cold and you don't want to go, whatever service feels like to you, you are always going to be rewarded in abundance exponentially. And that mentality has been very important for us on a collective level to really begin to shift that narrative is.
I love how everything that you say, how you're saying it is just so, it's, for my ears, it's like eating chocolate.
Thank you.
It's just like chocolate to my mouth.
I attest most of that to my performing background. People are like, how do you explain yourself so eloquently? And it's just because I've spent all of my life telling stories. And I've heard multiple friends of mine being like, you're an oversharer. And I'm like, I think it's just that I'm reflecting to you that you're an undersharer. Because what is wrong with being so open in your human experience? If anything, it has only gravitated more connections into my life. And I'm never going to be anything but transparent in this existence, because clearly me being an oversharer has only served me when it counts the most, right? In the times where someone says, Victoria, you're an oversharer, how that reflects my pattern of rejection. Being a performer all my life, I have a deep-seated shadow surrounding rejection and not being seen, but also just recognizing how to use that pain to amplify it into more power, and how that's only helped my community grow, how to help other people raise their hand and say, me too. That's because I had people come to me and say, you overshare, and then me choosing to continue to share.
Fuck yeah, choosing to go against the grain and what anyone else's opinion and judgment is. That is powerful.
It's only a reflection of them. It is. Everything is only a reflection of them.
Exactly, yes. And it's just there to show you. You can choose this or this. This is going to make you, go through that karma, have to learn that cycle. go through that lesson again, or you can choose that other uncomfortable route for a moment and then find out it is the higher road. It is what is actually going to propel you towards exactly what you need to go closer towards.
100%. And I think that that's what we're all learning right now, you know, is that these triggers that we feel based on someone else's perception, projection is only homework. It's only a gift to us, right? That is that person's level of consciousness. This is my level of consciousness. And my response is my responsibility. My responsibility. It's my responsibility to recognize that reflection that is coming back to me. Is that in alignment with my truth? No, actually, I think the ways of which I share are absolutely my purpose. Okay, but what did I feel? I felt triggered. I felt like my feathers puffed up and I wanted to tell her all about herself. That's my homework. Where did that energy come from? Was it when I was standing on stage in front of, 10 other women all fighting for the same role, all dressed in the same outfit, hoping to be seen? That's exactly where that came from. And when you know the root cause, from there you can pluck any root. But if you're continually taking everything so freaking personally, it's like you're never going to get past that trigger, and that's how you stay where you don't want to be.
Yes. I love that little analogy where you're fighting against those other women for that one role. Wow. I want to shift this conversation because we're going real good places with your storytelling, with your gifts, and with your services, and how you've been able to do so much healing and so much understanding that investing in yourself is what was going to release all of these patterns. And that is something that in society we're so afraid to do. And I want you to express how exactly that when you have come to this ascension work and energy healing, what does that look like now?
So I remember that there was a pivotal moment in time where someone had reached out to me probably about early June, and she had said, do you do any Reiki work? And at this point I was pulling tarot. I had started a website where I was basically offering 3-card spreads or 5-card spreads, basically like a little bit of an understanding of where you are, or a little bit further of an understanding. And I was basically sending them their reading back in a PDF. That was what I knew from some of my favorite tarologists. So I basically like stole the idea from the greats, and that worked for me. I recommend that, using what works for others and then finding a way for that to work for you and see how it sticks, right? And I remember she messaged me, and I'd taken a Reiki 1 course, but Reiki wasn't really resonating with me at that time. But at this point, I was in meditation for multiple hours a day. I was communicating with my spirit guides all the time. I was just beginning to understand the power of my mediumship abilities as well. And also just basically opening this portal for me and any spiritual realm I had desired. And I said to her, no, I don't, but I would love for you to be a test run of mine. And I would love to just, give you a week. Let me just see what comes out of me in meditation and see if anything shifts with you. So I basically took a picture of her, and I looked at her picture, and I closed my eyes in meditation, and I could clairvoyantly, meaning using my psychic gifts, I could see her face. And I basically said, hey, higher self, do the work. And I just surrendered my body as a vehicle for God. And I watched all of these images float around her body, pulling out all of these swords from her heart space, sending me symbolic images to relate to her about things in her childhood or things that she was moving through. And I remember leaving meditation being like, okay, let's see how that went. And I messaged her and I say, how are you feeling? This was maybe 1 or 2 days into me doing the work. And she was like, I feel so open. I feel so balanced. Wow, so much is shifting. I feel something happening inside of me. And that was the first moment that I was like, oh, there's something that I'm doing when I close my eyes in meditation that is telepathically calling upon these people's spirits and healing them by seeing their spirits and what is blocking them. So basically, I have the ability to call upon people's spirits and see where their blocks are. See what is holding them back. If they have anxiety, their energy body looks like when you lose power on your TV and it's all fuzzy. That's what it looks like. When you have certain blocks in your energy, I can see certain parts of you that look fuzzy. So I used your chakras to relieve some of the tension in your spirit based on where you're currently really moving through different turbulence in your life. If you've experienced loss, I'll do a lot of heart chakra clearing. If you're relating to money and having a troubling time really grounding yourself in your life purpose. And essentially what I do is I use different hypnosis, different mantras, different lights, different colors, and different symbols to help people really move through their energy bodies into higher states of consciousness. Now, that is still something I need to let your listeners know. Like, I still deeply doubt myself sometimes. And I have 14 full-time clients at most. You know, I'm in my clients' energy every single damn day. And I still have moments of being like, am I just imagining that they're feeling better? Or like, are they actually feeling better? Is this a placebo? And I recognize that that's the mind trying to, again, keep me entrapped in this idea that I don't have these gifts, because these gifts that we all inherently come to this earth with, this psychic ability to see spiritual beings as children, talk to imaginary friends, have this connection to animals, that is all our inherent state of being. We are all these psychic, intuitive beings, but then we get told Santa isn't real, that the tooth fairy isn't real, stop talking to your imaginary friends, and that truth gets dissolved by illusion. And now I'm in a space where I'm able to help many people through this telepathic ability that I have to release that storyline between that childhood intuitive knowing self and their adult corrupted illusional self. I almost bring them back to their childlike essence. And I do so using different telepathic, clairvoyant, and clairsentient abilities.
Wow.
Hopefully that makes sense.
That does. I understand that deeply. I absolutely love that. I think that to hold such strength and to trek forward into these realms of life where people are so, oh, that's so woo-woo, how is this real, blah, 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 and to disregard all of those naysayers, be like, you know what? You can take it or you can leave it, because it's just gonna, like, that's where you are, and you can only see with your mind, with your higher self, if you are ready to hear it, if you have done some work, if you are on that right, or not right or wrong, but on that path towards a deeper and more aware and mindful understanding.
Absolutely. And I actually don't talk to any of my castmates from Disney this past contract, which is so interesting to me, considering they were the ones who were praising my spiritual awakening at the end of my contract. But the second that we finished our contract, we started to consciousness, and I wasn't giving into the fear programming of mass media. I wasn't buying into the separation and division of politics. I was no longer conforming to what the mainstream narrative was saying. They couldn't meet me where I was meeting myself. And it's an important thing that your community knows that when you start to ascend, you are going to lose people who are not in alignment with your vibration anymore. But like my connection with you is, you will never be deprived of that family connection with those other soul beings who resonate with you. I have a beautiful diehard community on my social media, and I had them at 2,000 followers 5 months ago. I have them nearing 10K followers now. People who have been with me since the OG days, where I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew that something was developing. And those people who have naturally funneled out of my life because they couldn't meet me in my consciousness, that is okay, because I have only been rewarded tenfold with new connections that are actually in alignment with who I've become. Non-attachment to those who have fallen out of my life, and yet gratitude for those souls that are still on their own independent journeys, and then welcoming in higher vibrations into my reality.
Yes. Something that thank you for sharing that, because a lot of people get so fearful of losing that grasp of, oh, but these people, I know them, but I love them, but they love me, but you know, they don't really fit my mold, and I'm kind of like going this way, but they're like judging it, but I can make room for them. No, there is no room left. Like, you have to allow the space within yourself to be for yourself, for only anyone who is supporting and loving and going to, yes, meet you on that level, exactly like you said.
Absolutely. And I think I've had to turn a blind eye to my family for a while as well, especially when I first finished my contract in 2020 of March. This was around the time that we were all going into lockdown in Canada. And I told my family basically, like, too bad, so sad that you're operating in fear. I live in love and I will not be seeing you. And so I ended up going to stay by myself in a pretty tacky hotel for a little while my family ran like chickens with their head cut off, asking what happened to Victoria. And I said, I've been living on a cruise ship for 6 months and you don't know who I am anymore because I've evolved. So I'm going to take some time to integrate and understand where I fit in this world because I don't see what people see. And I'm going to come back to you when I'm ready. And now my family flocks to me. Victoria, will you do a reading for me? Victoria, will you, heal my grandmother? My grandmother gets typically very ill during the holidays. Well, not this year because I do energy healing work on her. There are things that my family is now starting to open and expand their consciousness to, because at some point they're like, how is she so rich, so happy, so in love? What are the answers? How did she get there? Instead of despising me for the choices that I make in my life that are not in alignment with the fear that they operate in. Those who mind don't matter. Those who matter don't mind. And if they're meant to be my family, my true family, running in this journey with me side by side, they will do so. Same goes for friends. And I think that mentality has been very helpful for me. One day they will be like, I knew her. And I will be like, I love you. And that's all that I can do.
Your messages are personally always so received with gratefulness because it's love. It is always going to be showing back up and saying, you know what, like, I know, like, that past happened, but moving forward, like, I still love you because that is all that there is to be. Like, there's no room for being, yeah, this is me. Watch me now. I don't know, being a little bit on the snooty end because exactly to just keep paving the way as a role model with compassion and love, and that's exactly what this world needs more of. Oh my gosh, now more than ever. So
that's the way we're going to heal this planet. Those who reach out to me, if they decide to reach out to me to either apologize for the ways that they blasted me and roasted me on social media for my beliefs, in whatever way they feel called, if they feel called to clear out that karma that they will inevitably have to do, whether it's with me or with another, everything works in cycles. So in whatever way people are externally projecting their pain on others will ultimately come back and bite them in the booty until they finally take responsibility for their life. But that doesn't affect me any longer. And I think that for a long time, it did. Losing people that I shared such deep connections with and watching them funnel out so quickly out of my life, being so empathetic was challenging for me. But I think the biggest thing is realizing that everybody's soul is on an independent path, all for the same thing, which is to embody heaven on earth. We all want the same thing at the core of our being, which is to be seen, heard, and understood, which is to hope that we can get to a place on this planet where we are all back to some sort of equilibrium and balance. And whatever way people are getting there, in whatever way they think that they're getting there, so be it. But the path that I'm on right now is a light worker and a starseed who is collectively ascending and moving the planet towards their personal power. I don't have room for that. And I think that's another important thing, is using those strong boundaries and discernment to recognize what is worth the energetic space it takes up, and what is worth the love that I need to provide myself to continue on a higher mission.
Amen to boundaries. Those will save your ass. And thank you for being a prime example of someone who has set those in place. That is that's beautiful.
Not easy, but worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Tenfold. The moment that you begin to set them up and you own that responsibility. I love what you said about that. That is where our reflections will truly unfold to what we need, what we want, our desire. And with your messages, with with helping us alchemize this new paradigm shift and starting to get down into this blossoming of a world that can operate out of a feminine, compassionate, nurturing soul food. Like, we can be commanders, but we can also be committed to community, all in one, versus just dictators and having to have all the money in one place. With your gifts, I just want you to be able to share, how could people who maybe are on the edge of, like, I feel like I'm seen, and that I'm a little bit different, and that I get these little nudges, like, what would you suggest to them to begin diving into their own gifts and services?
Absolutely. I would say to clear out anyone on your social media who would deter you from honoring those gifts is a big one. Clear out any of those lower vibrations that make you question your sanity. Second, I would say to dive into what feels good for you. What are those things that are starting to call you? Is it that you enjoy spending your time on YouTube listening to tarot? Is it that you are finding yourself on your algorithm on Instagram, maybe aligning with different astrologists? Whatever that looks like, starting to pay attention to the ways that the universe is giving you signs to show you a path, because the universe always works in signs and symbols. So there are certainly very clear messages that you're being gifted to show you that path. Lastly, I would say when you have a strong meditation practice and you commit to having an appointment with peace with yourself, is what I call it, the answer is clear as day. And that may not be like, I thought I was going to be a best-selling author in January 2020. That's where I thought I was going. But when you open yourself up, show me the highest timeline, show me the way through, something is calling me and I want to answer, show me the way, and you say this in a space where you're unobstructed by your mind's narrative, not only are you going to hear the voice of your soul and your intuition, but you're also going to feel that knowing, right? And that knowing is deeper than any noise around you. And that knowing has guided me to where I am now, that feeling inside of me that is deeper than anything, any external noise can tell me. It's been following that knowing that I hear in meditation when I'm quiet that continues to guide me on the path. So find the ways to silence the noise in whatever way that looks like for you, and then to really start to honor the knowing. Because that knowing is absolutely grounded in some level of fear, but that's because you're threatening your sense of identity and safety, and you need to do that in order to expand.
Perfectly said. Non-attachment is such a huge part of that process, to begin and to sit in that stillness and to just begin with that small amount of time. How long do you typically sit in meditation for?
So today I was in meditation for about 45 minutes. Typically, mind you, I currently have 6 full-time clients. So it takes me probably about 5 minutes to do each of their energy fields in a morning. And I like to take my time. If I have the time, I like to take my time. I'll do a few clients. I'll maybe put on some essential oils. I'll stretch my body a little bit. I will do a little bit of a yoga flow. In a perfect world where I have a little bit more time in a morning, it typically takes me about 2 hours to make my way start to finish through a practice, right? Where I'm working through my clients and then actually taking the time to set a boundary for myself and to sit with my guides, sit with what I need to do, and to hear the guidance I need. Granted, right now, I'm also doing a lot of teleporting. So I'm physically leaving my body and going to different galaxies. I'm going to communicate with different starseed families. I identify as an Andromedan starseed, so I will communicate with my Andromedan family about how I can continue to pave this path of light for people. So if I'm teleporting, meaning I'm like literally leaving my physical body and projecting outside of my physical to communicate messages for the collective, I will typically be in practice no longer than an hour. And then I may do multiple meditations, which currently I'd say about 2 or 3 a day right now at most. I will be in practice.
Wow. I love that dedication. That speaks to your Capricorn.
I love being in meditation. They ain't no breaking news that I don't want to hear in my meditations, right? It's like I have this beautiful opportunity to communicate with unbiased cheerleading team of spirit guides anytime I need, anytime I want. It's so beautiful to know that I and everybody on this planet has a team that is literally chosen to support you on your path. So I don't make a damn move unless I communicate with my spirit guides. I don't, because now I'm so connected with them that I allow them and welcome them into my space. So I thoroughly enjoy that time that I get to connect with, you know, that spiritual knowing. And then bringing it back down to the earth is really, honestly, in my opinion, the more challenging part.
To come back to the
Oh yeah, I have to come back to 2020.
oh my gosh. I'm highly interested in that, in the star seed and the transcension of that, and yeah, visiting those other realms that when you can't physically see it, it can be so hard to grasp or understand. However, you take away that judgment, you take away the illusions we've had built for us to believe in that was the only way. So much more is given to you. And I want to take this time to have you express like anything that you are promoting right now in the sense of your services, or what is going on in your life that you could welcome people to come and join you and invite them to learn more from you.
Sure. Thank you, Izzy, for gifting me that opportunity to explain a little bit about that. Currently, I offer a few different services, one being just a standard tarot session. Everything is through Zoom for these particular offerings. It's a one-on-one head-to-heart session, I call it. And I talk about where your current energy is at. You can find that predominantly, I would say, on my Instagram. My Instagram is Victoria Pippo, Pippo. And predominantly through there, there's a link in my bio where you can see that there's this particular tarot offering. Also, if you want not only the spiritual hygiene of receiving your current energy, but also the energetic aspect of it, where I will clear and open and align your energy field. There is a deluxe session offering as well that gives you the ability to get some energy healing as well. Currently, I also am taking on full-time clients depending on where I'm at energetically. It's kind of a per feeling basis, but that's essentially anyone who's working through a cycle that they don't feel like they can break, a trauma that feels too heavy to carry, or a personal roadblock that is potentially blocking you from getting to where you want to be. I do take on full-time clients, and you can just reach out to me. That's what people do when they're wondering if I have an opening. And then lastly, I do also have a business course that is probably the newest thing that I've launched. It's called 3D to 5D and 60. And it is a badass course of limited women and men who come into a space who have ideas about a business, and I help them get to where I've been able to be, which is a multiple 5-figure business in less than 5 months with nothing but pure, intention and knowing and intuitive guidance. That's ultimately what it is. I don't follow any silly by the book strategies. I follow my soul, and I assist people in doing that as well. And that opening for next enrollment will be December 12th. And you can find that as well on my Instagram, or also my YouTube channel, which is by my name as well, Victoria Pippo.
Gosh, that's so exciting. I am always looking, I'm like, ooh, that looks fun. I want to try that. Right there for me to be tipping into that. So that is expected in my future.
I'm putting it out.
I love it. I've loved this conversation so much. Is there any last bits that you want to share with the listeners today for where we're at in this world, or any motivation that you have for us today?
I think the best piece of advice or guidance that me and your spiritual guides want to give you is that it's going to be okay. That is literally the best piece of advice that I can gift you. We all just want to know that it's going to be okay. And I want to let you know that your soul has chosen to be here right now because it knows it's going to be okay. So just know that and feel into that and trust that if you can, even just for a second today, that it's going to be okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. From the depths of my heart, thank you. This conversation has been truly, truly received and felt and supported and held with so much love. To have these deeper conversations where it's beyond the mind, it's beyond what our physical can oftentimes tangibly comprehend. It's that soul work, and it's that soul food, and it's that essence of goodness that just runs through your body, and you get those tingles and those feelings, and it's all about those nudges. So once again, thank you so much for showing up and being here with me, with all the listeners today. I am 100% sure that this is going to affect a lot of people and anyone who hears it. So your voice is beautiful and your heart is so loved, and thank you for being here and in your highest power to help serve the collective.
Honored and blessed, sis. Thank you.
All right, guys, we will catch you next Monday on Incredible Conversations with another badass woman of the world, and we'll see you then.